She loved to steal life savings from British investors, selling them fake property she supposedly sold them. And she got evicted from her apartment, so she figured, why not run a scam on the way out? Let's get right into some of the most heartless scammers. Number 5. Not evicted. Homestead police have accused 3 people in Florida of using social media to run a real estate scam. Priscilla Mary Contreras posed as a realtor and utilized social media to lure victims to vacant homes. Her accomplices, Yodani Carrillas Diaz and Dinosaur Bravo, then pretended to be the homeowners and were in charge of the financial transactions with the victims. The trio listed the homes on Facebook Marketplace, and people interested in the properties reached out to the seller, Contreras. She greeted prospective tenants with her 2-month-old baby on her hip as she introduced herself as the real estate agent. She showed them around the properties, and then, if the potential tenants were interested, they would sign fake contracts and put down a security deposit and first and last month's rent. One of the homes that Contreras advertised was her own, although she was in the process of fighting eviction after the homeowner said that she stopped paying rent. Father of 2, Kenny, found the listing of a Miami-Dade home on Facebook and contacted Contreras for a tour. After seeing the property, he knew it would be a good place for him and his family. He paid over $5,000 for his security deposit and first and last month's rent. He also signed a lease. On their move-in day, he turned up at the house in a U-Haul, but when he got there, he found out that other families were also trying to move in that day. Maria Ura was 7 months pregnant when she found a rental property on Facebook Marketplace. Needing a home for herself and her baby, she gave the trio all her savings when she paid the move-in costs. Homestead police arrested Contreras in March 2022, who estimated that, with the help of Diaz and Bravo, scammed multiple victims out of $24,000. Priscilla turned herself into authorities in March 2022 following mounting pressure from family members. Diaz and Bravo are on the run and haven't been arrested yet. She faces multiple charges both in Homestead and Miami. They include grand theft, acting as a real estate broker without a license, unlawful communications device use, and organized schemes to defraud. Her attorney fought for her bond to be reduced due to her having a baby to care for and only having a few misdemeanors on her record. The judge ordered a bond of $28,500. Priscilla will need a Nebbia hearing to ensure she doesn't use stolen money from victims to pay her bond. You may be wondering what a Nebbia hearing is. A Nebbia hearing is also referred to as a bail source hearing, and is where a plaintiff must disclose the source of the funds used to post bail. If she can post bond after the Nebbia hearing, the court will give her a GPS monitor and she'll be placed on house arrest. Number 4. Aussie scamming. Australian businessman Chris Marco swindled $254 million out of 340 investors in a massive Ponzi scheme that lasted 16 years. He ran it through his company AMS Holdings, an unregistered investment scheme. Over those 16 years, he used the money from trusting investors for personal uses like classic cars or to purchase and maintain properties. Through his company AMS Holdings, Marco specifically targeted people who wanted to invest their retirement assets, sometimes called mom and dad investors. He lured them into working with him by flaunting his skill for tapping into international private investment programs, claiming that it would give them high returns on their investments. One of those investors was Troy Adams, who lost $400,000 through AMS Holdings. He claimed to have lost everything through the scheme, even his home and car. Another investor, Patricia Markopoulos, was scammed out of $5 million. She became Marco's family practically when she married his second cousin. After her husband suffered from a traumatic injury, Marco frequently visited the couple in the hospital. Unfortunately, her husband passed away, but she remained in contact with Marco. Marco advised her to sell her properties and give him the money to invest. He later denied these claims, but the Supreme Court of Western Australia eventually ruled that he owed Markopoulos' family $5.9 million plus interest. Marco made it no secret that he enjoyed a lavish lifestyle. He used investor funds to purchase and maintain his properties, support his party lifestyle, and fund his car collection. In 2020, his assets included his extensive collection of vintage cars, each worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. He owned a 1971 Ford Falcon XY GTH 03, a 1972 Holden Torana Bathurst LJ GTR XU1, and a 1972 Chrysler Charger VHE 40. In December 2020, the Perth Magistrates Court wound up AMS Holdings, Marco's unregistered investment scheme. The court also permanently restrained Marco from operating an unregistered managed investment scheme and forever denied him from having a financial services business unless he obtained an Australian financial services license. His court date was initially planned for July 22, 2022, but the court adjourned it several times and it's now scheduled for February 1st, 2023. He's charged with 50 counts of fraud, and that includes defrauding $36.5 million from 9 investors. Of the $36.5 million, he defrauded $10 million from one single investor. Each offense carries a 7-year sentence if the deceived is under 60, or a 10-year sentence if the deceived is 60 years or older. Number 3. Truffle trees. Between 2012 and 2014, fraudsters David Austin, Susan Dalton, and Alan Barrett misled 245 people into investing £13.7 million into fake pension schemes. Each victim lost around £55,000, although that number is much higher for some people. The person credited with masterminding the entire scheme, David Austin, committed suicide in 2019 when police called him for an interview. The fraudsters persuaded pensioners to transfer their pension savings into multiple managed schemes. Victims typically transferred around £55,000, which were moved to David Austin's account, who used the money to enrich himself, fund his businesses, and pay others involved in the operation. The trio made many false promises to the victims. They told them they would receive cash bonuses, unrealistic returns, and vouchers to John Lewis, a popular high-end British department store. When the time came for David Austin to face the music, he committed suicide. Police contacted him for an interview, and after using the money for personal benefit, it was only a matter of time before the authorities would uncover his crimes. Many victims lost everything they had to the scam, leaving their lives ruined. Pauline Padden is still reeling from the experience after losing £45,000. She was drawn into the scam when she received a text that promised her higher returns on her pension and combined bonuses for transferring her pension funds. She has been a critical care nurse since she was 18, but in 2013, she spent most of her time looking after her dying mother. After being unable to make a steady income, the prospect of extra cash was too enticing to ignore. Now she's dealing with seeing friends and co-workers preparing to retire, and since she lost so much of her pension, she's unsure when she'll be able to do the same. Stephen O'Reilly's dreams of having money to leave for his children and to put towards living in Spain during his retirement were destroyed in 2013 when the trio lured him into the scam. A person he believed to be an independent government pension advisor told O'Reilly that he was getting a bad deal on his pension. So he transferred £114,000 to fix this, with no idea that he had just fallen victim to Austin, Dalton, and Barrett's elaborate scheme. The scammers made him think he had a lump sum of cash on its way, and he ordered a new car. When the cash never came, he had to borrow money from his mother. O'Reilly was devastated, having worked long hours and contributing large amounts of money to his pension, expecting it to guarantee him a comfortable retirement. In April 2022, Southwark Crown Court in London sentenced Ian Barrett and Susan Dalton to a combined total of 10 years. They pleaded guilty to fraud by abuse of position, admitted to misleading victims during their time as trustees of pension schemes. Barrett received a 5-year and 7-month sentence, and Dalton received a 4-year and 8-month sentence. The pair were banned from acting as company directors for the next 8 years. Number 2. Con for ConMac. Nassau County Police arrested financial advisors Matthew Eckstein and Kevin Brody in 2018 for running a Ponzi scheme that scammed almost 50 people out of $12 million. Their elaborate scheme targeted vulnerable victims, mainly seniors, who they duped out of their retirement savings and other finances. Brody and Eckstein encouraged clients to invest in Conman Funding Corp., the name of Brody's company at the time. They reassured investors that their money would be protected and told some of them that the principal would be returned by Conman Funding in 2 years with 4% interest. Eckstein lured many of the victims into the scheme, as some were existing clients for another firm he owned called Sisk Investment Services. He took advantage of his relationship with them to convince them to invest in Conman Funding. They deceived their clients into thinking their money would be used to finance premium insurance loans. Eckstein told others they were putting down a certificate deposit that would receive a guaranteed interest rate. Once victims had invested, they were given a username and password for ConMac's website to see their account statements and growing balances. Victims then believed that their money was gaining interest with the company. They were unaware that the portal they were accessing was bogus And instead of investing in combat funding, their money was going directly to Eckstein and Brody. The pair used the money to fund their other enterprises, from personal expenses, paying other scheme victims, to investing in hamburger restaurants. Eckstein used some of the funds for the down payment on his elaborate home, which had a tennis court and swimming pool. The Nassau County District Attorney opened an investigation into Eckstein and Brody's business practices after an elderly victim reported them to officials. Eckstein was the victim's financial advisor and personal accountant and invested $385,000 into conman funding. He told her the investment was safe and misled her into thinking she had no reason to worry. Eckstein also made the victim believe that she would get her money back in 2 years, and by that point, it would have accrued substantial interest. 2 years passed, and when the victim requested the money, the company only sent her $26,999. It was a small percentage of her original $385,000 investment. Eckstein claimed she would receive the money in installments. The conman funding only sent one payment. She reached out to him repeatedly, but he stopped answering her calls. And in 2017, she told officials what happened. One of Eckstein's biggest mistakes was that he used the Postal Service as part of his scheme, which led Postal Service inspectors to investigate his business practices. The Postal Inspection Service worked with the FBI and the New York State Comptroller's Office, executed a search warrant into Eckstein's home office, where they found thousands of financial documents. The NCDA had enough information to arrest Eckstein in June 2018, but they were only aware of roughly 14 people he had victimized. Following his arrest, they discovered 26 more people that he had conned in the same scheme. A total of 40 victims came forward, which prompted the NCDA to upgrade his charges. They also had enough evidence to arrest Brody in connection with the scheme. Eckstein was charged with grand larceny in the first degree and conspiracy in the fourth degree. He pleaded guilty in September 2019. However, he later withdrew that plea. But then, in a new indictment against him, he pleaded guilty again. The Nassau County District Attorney sentenced him to 10 years in prison. His house is also now in foreclosure. Brody was charged with grand larceny in the second degree and conspiracy in the fourth degree and was sentenced to 7 years in prison. In October 2019, Nassau County District Attorney Madeline Singas announced that the majority of the victims received roughly $5.6 million in restitution. Number 1. Turkish properties. Haley Brown, a British con woman, scammed hundreds of thousands of pounds in a Turkish property scam that targeted business investors. Victims paid large amounts of money to Haley, with one of them losing £600,000 to the scam. Between 2006 and 2009, she conned people out of more than $1.2 million. Brown was arrested in November 2009 in connection with this scam, but it wasn't the first time she faced prison charges. She served 5 years in prison for 2 counts of firearm defenses, where she disguised a taser into looking like a mobile phone and possessed a canister of CS-type gas, which is a prohibited weapon in the UK. Brown's elaborate scheme involved enticing investors into buying low-cost homes in Turkey. She invited them to Turkey so they could tour the properties and paid for them to stay in expensive hotels. She told them that people were occupying the property, so it wouldn't be possible to tour them. Victims felt that this made their investment safer since all the units they were shown were filled. She instructed victims to pay her, and then she would buy the properties in their name. The terms of the purchase were that they would receive rental income, and in 3 years, they'd either be able to renew the arrangement, sell the property, or continue to rent them out. However, the rent investors received was irregular, and they never received the returns Brown promised. She gave them excuses to explain why the money they received wasn't what she promised. Victims were rapidly losing money and asked her to sell the properties. She showed them forged official documents and fake bank statements to show that she had received the money and would pass it on soon. She also forged emails between her and her bank officials where they discussed the transfers of these large sums of money. Rather than investing victims' money into property, Brown put it towards personal expenses. She used the money to fund her lifestyle instead of allowing the victims to let it improve their own lives. She stole £1.5 million, but the court discovered that her only assets equaled £56,846 during a confiscation hearing. Those assets included a Chanel watch that cost $6,000, a Rolex watch that cost £5,000, and £45,000 that were in hidden assets. During the trial, when Judge Guy Curl asked about what happened to the rest of the money, prospector Paul Reed informed the court that none was left. The bank repossessed her home, and when they went inside, they found many counterfeit clothes that the judge ordered to be destroyed. Judge Keel ordered Brown to pay £56,846 to avoid additional prison time due to his default. He planned on turning the money into total compensation payments that they would give to the victims, which would still be a fraction of the money they lost. Later, the victims learned that she never had permission to work in Turkey and never paid taxes there. No properties were registered in her name in Turkey either, making it clear that the documents she produced were all false. Leeds Crown Court charged her with 10 offenses of fraud, 2 of using a false document with the intent to deceive, and 3 of obtaining a money transfer by deception. She denied all of the charges. In 2014, she was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section what you'd rather do. Go to prison for 2 years or live on a deserted island for 5 years.